Hey everyone, Dr. Shook here, and this is another sauna session. In this sauna session, what I want to talk to you about is I want you to consider how antibiotics might promote autoimmunity. And in particular, let's talk about Hashimoto's, right? So that's the most common autoimmune condition in the United States, and it's what I see the most in my office. It's what I work most specifically with. It's what I've dedicated my studies more to than any other autoimmunity, is just understanding the thyroid and thyroid physiology and this autoimmune process. So whenever we look at antibiotics, a lot of people have heard and know that antibiotics need to be used very conservatively, right? We know that we are approaching this time in our civilization where we're reaching the limits of our antibiotics, where we are getting to this point where there's antibiotic resistance. Bacteria now aren't always killed by antibiotics. They are less sensitive to them, so they're not destroyed as easily, and they become resistant. So the more that we use antibiotics, the more that we create this opportunity for superbugs and these things that are not that they do not respond to antibiotics. And when that point occurs, we're going to be kind of thrust back into this pre-antibiotic stage in our society. And that's a scary thing to consider, because antibiotics have saved lots and lots of lives. If you followed me at all, you know that I try not to be too polarized one way or the other on a lot of topics, because I feel like that there's and I believe that there's a balance, right? There's a time and a place for everything. If someone's dying of an infection, give me some antibiotics. Give me some antibiotics. But if I have maybe, for example, I've experienced this a lot myself. If I have a respiratory infection it's not severe, but it's an infection. I routinely will utilize my own nutritional support protocols and things just to make sure that my body has optimal vitamins and minerals to carry out the chemistry so that I have better immune regulation and immune health. And I try to do that all the time. But my point here is antibiotics are beneficial. I think they're very beneficial. I'm very thankful that we have those as tools to help save lives, because they do. But they're oftentimes used excessively, and there are consequences to utilization of antibiotics. And for one thing, it comes down to antibiotics wipe out bacteria, right? That's why you're taking it, to kill a bacterial infection. And guess what you have 100 trillion of in your digestive tract? 100 trillion gut bacteria, right? You have gut bacteria. It's called your microbiome. Guess what happens when you take an antibiotic to kill that bacteria that's causing, let's say, your respiratory infection or whatever infection it may be? It's going to have an impact upon those bacteria in your GI tract, and you're going to kill and wipe out a lot of those bacteria. And so we see that there, a lot of things can happen after antibiotics. You see that people can very frequently have overgrowth of yeast, where basically, what happens is the antibiotic wipes out lots of those gut bacteria, and while you're taking it to kill the bacteria you're trying to get rid of, right? But it wipes out. There are casualties. There's collateral damage. There are these bacteria that die that you don't want to die. And so what happens is this poses a great opportunity, or makes this opportunity for these opportunistic bacteria. So you have good and bad bacteria in your gut. I mean, they're not really good and bad as long as they're in balance. Okay, so there's a balance of bacteria. And what it does is it will it can create an imbalance in these gut bacteria. And then the opportunistic bacteria that tend to be, if you have an overgrowth of certain bacteria, they become an infection. If you have an imbalance of certain infection, you have dysbiosis, or an imbalance. And all of these things pose problems, right? Because a chronic infection can create localized inflammation of the GI tract and promote an inflammatory response that breaks down the GI tract wall, causes you to lose some of this natural mucus barrier, and then it makes the one cell layer thick wall that's on the inside of the GI tract, makes makes that can make that cell wall leaky or porous. And we call that intestinal permeability or leaky gut. And this can all be perpetuated by, you could take an antibiotic, could wipe out bacteria, you have an overgrowth of opportunistic bacteria, or you have an overgrowth of yeast, because you have yeast present, but these yeast could overgrow. They can grow like weeds, and they can take advantage of this loss of normal balance, and they can fill in the void, and they can grow very rapidly. And then you can have infections that form after antibiotics in the gut, or you can throw off the gut microbiome, the bacterial balance. And so what that does is that can for one thing, that can set up an opportunity or a scenario where your GI tract wall becomes permeable and leaky, allowing proteins and bacterial debris, lipopolysaccharides, these other compounds, into the bloodstream, promoting an immune response. Okay, these are things that we know can occur. So bacteria has to be considered. The bacterial balance needs to be considered. And antibiotics, you have to understand that there are some potential consequences. So I want to share that with you guys because I think it's really, really important. Now, so I think that you should have a doctor that is conservative. When you have something that you think that needs an antibiotic, talk to your doctor. See if they can do some testing to determine specific sensitivity, so they can use an antibiotic that will kill whatever you're trying to kill very specifically. So it's not a broad spectrum antibiotic that just wipes out everything. Try to be as specific as possible and find sensitivities to what you're trying to kill. Okay, so that's the first thing. Second thing is if you have to take it, I've seen that taking a probiotic between doses of the antibiotic, I've seen where that has been beneficial for some people, but just ask your doctor and see if they're okay with you doing that. Because what happens if you're wiping out these bacteria with the antibiotic, if you take a probiotic, so let's say you take your antibiotic in the morning and before bed, so if you take it right in between that period of time, right, let's say it's just 12 hours for simplicity's sake, which most people it's a larger gap, but 12 hours, so at 6 hours you might take a high dose probiotic to help reestablish some gut bacteria when the antibiotic is at its weakest. Okay, if that makes sense, because you don't want to take that it's not its weakest, but it's in between doses. So if you took it closer to the dose, to your second dose of the day, you might take your probiotic, then take your antibiotic and wipe out the probiotic you just took. This at least gives it an opportunity to try and colonize some of the gut. So there's some really important things that I think you could do, but you need to just be cautious and conscious of what the consequences of antibiotics can be. They're life-saving for sure, but we're reaching a time where we've got to be extremely conservative with them, because we're going to make all of these bacteria resistant, and then we're not going to have anything to help us. Okay, so it's very scary. The other thing is it can promote, there's a potential for it to promote autoimmunity, as I've discussed with this intestinal permeability, promoting chronic infections, and there's lots of other things that could potentially occur just directly from the antibiotic. Maybe it has a negative effect on your body, and that's not related to the gut bacteria. And so I've heard of certain classes of antibiotics, people that I've seen in practice that have reached out to me that have neurological damage, apparently related to that, and it can be a serious thing. So you just want to be conservative, right? You want your body to be as healthy as possible. You want to do what you can so that you don't need those things. But if you need them, you need them. If I need them, I need them. And there's a time and place, I think, for everything. So balance in life, balance in approach to health. I follow the approach. I try to work with people with the idea that less is more as much as possible. Be as specific as possible with your interventions and things that you're going to try to do to help someone, because the body's always working towards a state of self-preservation. Remember that, right? If you cut your hand, what happens? It will just scab and heal on its own, right? You don't have to do anything to it most of the time. And it will completely do that on its own, because the body's always working to self-preserve. So whatever's happening to you and how you feel, that's your body trying to preserve, save your life, to work to help you. So just keep those things in mind. If you're having problems with your thyroid, most people that are following me, they have thyroid issues, they're autoimmune. One of the things that I would suggest to you is, and there's a few things that you might want to consider here. if you're having thyroid issues, right, or if you're having thyroid-related symptoms, right, you have fatigue, you have a lot of issues, you suspect it may be your thyroid, or you know you have a thyroid problem and you just don't feel like it's been worked up properly. The first thing and the easiest thing that you can do is I created a guidebook called 9 Tests Required to Understand Your Thyroid. And what I do is I have 9 laboratory markers in there, and I talk about the ranges, I talk about some of the indications that those markers, if they're higher or lower, what they could potentially mean for you. Also, I cover more narrow ranges, which we call functional ranges, which we believe are more ideal than the broad lab ranges. And so it goes into some of those details. If you're having problems there with your thyroid, or you're having issues with how you feel, that's a great place to start, just to get some information, to kind of look at some of the labs that you have and get an idea of what might be going on. Okay. Now, if you're interested in trying to figure out a dietary approach to help with autoimmunity and help with thyroid function, I put together a program that is not just diet, but it's also a lifestyle-based program. It goes into a lot of other aspects of your life, not just diet. But we designed it because we've been implementing things clinically with patients, and I wanted to make that information available to people in mass. So we created the 6-week Hashimoto's Transformation Program. And so even though it's Hashimoto's, it'd be appropriate for anyone that's autoimmune. I mean, it's going to help. The main things it's going to do is help decrease inflammation, balance blood sugar, and help support gut health and healing. And that's a great place that you can also start. And if you're interested in either one of those things, our guidebook on the 9 tests, or if you're interested in our program, just let me know, and I'll post a comment or something with a link so that you can get access. You can go and learn more about that, and you can start one of those programs or get that guidebook if you choose to. But I hope this helps you guys out. I really wanted to share this important connection between antibiotics, because a lot of people have questions. They're not really sure, like, they hear this stuff, but they don't know if it's good science or if it makes sense, and that they're worried. And I understand. I mean, there's a lot of things in science. I'm just going to tell you guys, we don't know for sure. There's a lot of debate over things. There's a lot of new science that's coming out, but there are certain things that we do know, and I don't think there's any controversy in using in the idea that we need to use antibiotics conservatively, and that they can create other problems, especially when abused or used with a lot of repetition. And don't feel bad if you have to take antibiotics. Try to be as specific and conservative as you can. Ask your doctor questions about if there's something that you can take that may be more specific, but there are a lot of different applications, right? It's not just an infection. Sometimes it's to prevent infection in people that are very susceptible. And so there's a lot of debate. It's not always clear cut. So that's why everyone's an individual. And I just want to share this with you guys, because I think it's really, really important that you understand and you have some strategies to try and help minimize that. If I was going to say, like, one nutritional supplement that I've seen that's really helped people, and it's vitamin D. Vitamin D. Vitamin D is it helps to improve your regulatory T cell function. And all you need to know is that regulatory T cells help to balance the production of immune system cells. And a lot of people are severely deficient or very, very low on the lab range. So the lab range in our area is 30 to 100. That's the blood serum range for vitamin D. And what I find is that people that are autoimmune do better around 70 as a blood serum range. They just have better regulatory T cell responses. They can balance and regulate their immune system. A lot of people are sick, they're autoimmune, or maybe they're chronically sick, and they don't have optimal vitamin D, and then they have issues with regulatory function of their immune system. So I'm going on a little bit longer than I wanted to on this video, but I just wanted to share with you guys the importance of antibiotics, how it can affect autoimmunity, and give you some ideas and things that you might want to consider to keep you healthy. Okay, I appreciate you guys. If you need anything, you just let us know, but I appreciate you coming here to learn more about your health. If there's anything that we can do for you, please feel free to contact us. Thanks.